2001 until I was appointed in May of 2010. I'm originally from Ripley, West Virginia. I, of course, went to WVU, where I met my wife, Amy Schuler Goodwin, who is from Wheeling, West Virginia. And we have two not so little boys anymore. They're growing up and growing up fast, and we stink. I mean, my God, I was walking by my son Sam, my youngest. He was in the shower for like 20 minutes the other night, and I leaned over to kiss him on the head, and it smelled like wet dog. I said, "Did you shampoo your hair?" "Oh man!" So he trotted his butt back in the shower. We do have two remarkable and special young boys, and when people ask me, why in the world do you want to run for governor, especially at this time, when it is a $350 million question? That's actually the budget shortfall that we have this year. And I respond two main reasons, and they're named Joe and Sam. Because I fear that if we don't do something bold, if we don't do something substantial, if we don't make the investments necessary in our future, then it's going to be very, very difficult for me to convince them that this is a place where they want to stay and live and grow and raise a family. Because we have very serious challenges right now, and it seems like nobody is talking about them. We're talking about everything but the very serious challenges that we face. We do have a drug abuse crisis. We do have a state budget crisis. We have a jobs crisis. And it seems like, let's sweep that stuff under the rug. And I fear that if we don't address those issues, make the tough calls that need to be made, then it's going to be difficult for my children, your children, our children's children to live, grow, work here in West Virginia. That being said, West Virginia has remarkable promise. We are a special, special place. We care about one another as a people unlike any other state I can imagine. And you can see it. I mean, if you've been out of the state, you actually have a flying WD hat on, or a Marshall cap, whatever that identifies you as being associated with the state. And someone sees you and says, "Hey, are you from West Virginia?" You've got an instant connection there. I mean, it happened to me in Florida this last summer. I had a WVU basketball shirt on. I walked into a hardware store. Guy said, "West Virginia, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Ripley." And he said, "Well, I'm from Ravenswood." I'm like, "How about that?" And if anyone knows about the rivalry that exists between Ripley and Ravenswood, you would think that we would fall to fighting right there in the aisle of the True Value in Florida. But you had that instant connection, and you start rattling off who you know, and immediately, it's not 6 degrees of separation in West Virginia, it's 1. You know somebody that knows somebody. So, I'm definitely running against folks who have more financial wherewithal. And people say, are you crazy? Why do you want the job? And do you realize you're running against very substantial moneyed interest? But that doesn't concern me in a place like West Virginia. It would concern me in a place like New York or New Jersey, where I think you could literally buy, but there's only so much media you can buy here, and everybody knows everybody. I mean, you're 1 degree separate. We were talking about it on the way in. It takes no time to connect with someone. I was fraternity brothers with her brother. I mean, while we had never formally met, we knew someone who knew someone. And that's what's special about West Virginia. And this deep passion that we have as West Virginians for West Virginia. I fear that we are being divided, and divided in a very, very serious way. And it's going to take us coming back together as West Virginians to move this state forward. And, you know, we need to recognize that that we are one state, but at the same time, we all have various strengths, but challenges in the various regions. There are at least 5 different regions that you need to look at in West Virginia, and they all have very different strengths and weaknesses, especially right now. And we've got to recognize that and invest in the places that are growing, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And that's what I see in Morgantown. Morgantown, I dearly love Morgantown. I spent literally the best, funnest, most special years of my life here. All under the tutelage of the mayor back there. She kept me straight. And Ronnie, I don't know how much time I spent back in the student organization wing under their watchful eye. But I had a special, and I have a special bond with Morgantown. And it's so wonderful. It's like a breath of fresh air to be here, even though it's very, very cold out there. It's a breath of fresh air to be here because things are very depressing in Southern West Virginia. The coal market has fallen so far, so fast. And there is despair. There is a feeling that there is no end in sight. And again, we're talking about everything else but the real issues and how to move forward as a state and as a people. So I guess I want to end with this part with this. Please, when you go to the voting, when you are talking to your friends, ask them to look at the candidates who are talking about the real issues and who are wanting to move this state forward. And I would appreciate you looking deeply at me and what I stand for, my record as the United States Attorney and as an Assistant U.S. Attorney. And I would encourage you to reach out. I think that is the only way that we are going to move forward as a state, is if we're all united as one and all talking as one and together as one voice. So to learn more about me, my campaign is just boothgoodwin.com, BOOTH, no E, boothgoodwin.com, and about tank construction to prosecute a chemical leak case, or learn about the addictive nature, or profound addictive nature of opiates and how to attack that crisis. So I'm not shy about digging in, rolling up my sleeves, and addressing complex problems using the tools that I have. But what that takes, almost universally, is bringing together the people who truly know about those areas and making sure that they're around the table and we're all speaking with one voice. So that being said, I'd love to open it up to questions. Yes, sir.
Tom Lowe, Montague County Commissioner. We are very fortunate in this county. Our population is growing, our economic base is growing. However, there appears to be a disconnect in Charleston, actually south of Weston, I guess, basically I could say. And it's not a Democrat or Republican problem. It is a North versus South perception, where the Republican right now House group is not helping us. The Democratic governor is not helping us. I have a very simple question for you. What do you bring to the citizens of Montague County that we know that someone will talk and work with us.
Well, as I alluded to before, I have a deep love for Morgantown. Like I said, it was, I spent some of the best years of my life here. I've got some very, very dear friends here. And I understand that we need to make the investments necessary in the places that are growing in order to raise that tide, because that rising tide does lift all ships. Martinsburg is having the same challenges. I mean, they are growing by leaps and bounds out there. And I think for years and years, probably forever, we've just kind of divided up the pie 55 ways and pushed it down. And I don't know that we can do that anymore. We certainly can't. I don't know if we could have ever afforded to do that and do things right. But I just don't think that we can afford to do that anymore. I was talking to a group last night, and we were talking about allocation of resources, and the issue of curing cancer came up. And there are all these funds funding research for all kinds of different ailments and all kinds of different afflictions, and certainly they're all very important and well-meaning. But if we were to take all the research dollars associated with medical research and devote it for 1 year to curing cancer, we very likely could do it. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do that, but understand that we need to make certain critical judgments and make tough choices and invest where we're growing in a way that we haven't done so before. Yes, Jeff?
Bruce, what would be your plan for solving our drug addiction problem in West Virginia?
Well, Your Honor, one of the reasons why I decided to jump in this race as well is, I had a great toolkit as the United States Attorney. It is very handy when you can indict people. Or, well, ask a grand jury and they indict people. But what I could do was somewhat indirect. And my toolkit, while very powerful in the ability to convene people, was very gratifying. I wanted a different kind of toolkit because I recognized early on that we cannot arrest our way out of the drug problem. That being said, I don't make any excuses for or any apologies for the prosecutions that we did. What we tried to do was target the higher level offenders in particular areas. But we also went after a zero tolerance policy in some others where it just wasn't going to happen. I mean, these people were not going to hit rock bottom until they were prosecuted and that jailhouse door slammed. But we've got to look at the other side of the coin. We've got to look at the demand side, because I think we've done a pretty good job on the supply side. But what we've done is we've raised the price of prescription drugs so much that we've shifted it to a heroin problem. Heroin is very cheap, and that has made the risk of overdose grow exponentially, because it's not, you're not getting the 30 milligram amount of drugs. You don't know what you're going to get. It could be 20% purity or 80% purity, and you're not going to know. And if you're used to 20% and get 80%, you overdose. That being said, shifting it to the heroin has enabled us to crack down a little bit easier, because heroin is illegal every day, all day. And our challenge with prescription drugs was that prescription drugs were legal. And if you had a script for it, even if you had obtained some of those pills illegally, you had them in a pill bottle, what could we do with it? And the other thing about shifting it to a heroin problem is young people, kids, don't just start off by shooting up heroin, okay? So if we can control it and shift it there on the supply side long enough that we can do something about the demand side, then I think we'll start making some strides. But it's that demand side that is so crucial. Opiate addiction is so powerful. And I don't think people really understand this, that most of the addicts are now using just to be normal. We stopped a young man coming out of a drug house. The drug task force agents went up to him and said, "What are you doing?" And clean cut guy. He said, "I've got an engineering final, and if I don't have this pill, I'm not going to be able to get through it." It wasn't about getting high, it was about not getting violently ill. People have likened withdrawal symptoms to imagining the work together help equal for help for WB. But one of the things to enhance that we did through my office was do an app for iPhones and Androids called The Call WV, THECALL-WV, The Call WV. And what that app does is you open it up, it finds your location using the location chip in your phone, and plots you on a map and puts the resources that are available to you around you. Everything from AA, NA meetings, and this is statewide. It's built off the same database that the Help for WB hotline is. So what you can see very rapidly are the resources that are at your disposal. What I didn't anticipate is when you start putting it on a map, you start seeing the extraordinary gaps that we have here in the state as well. And that's something that I think can drive support, and people will recognize that we need to do something about that. There is a companion website as well called MakeTheCallWV.com. Same idea. You put in your zip code and it'll put you on a map, and you can see the resources that are available to you. Another development that there's been in combating the drug epidemic is the legislature actually did pass last year greater availability of what's called naloxone. Naloxone is overdose antidote. So if someone has an acute overdose episode, it's a nasal application. You can squirt it up their nose, and it reverses the overdose. We had, the paramedics have had availability to that, but we wanted it to get in the hands of the family members who have folks struggling with addiction, who need that peace of mind, and get it in the hands of law enforcement officers who may oftentimes be the first on the scene. So I know that it was an extraordinarily long answer to your question, Gar, but I think you can see, and seeing the folks that come before you every day, that there is not a silver bullet or a magic pill for this problem. It takes bringing together mental health professionals, substance abuse counselors, law enforcement, educators. It takes reaching into our schools. One of the things that I did was go out and talk to middle school, high school age kids, even down to 4th, 5th graders, about the dangers of substance abuse. we did a video called Equal Opportunity Destroyer. You can find it online at eodwv.com. And what that is, I mean, it's not a cat in a tutu video. It's not gonna go viral anytime soon, but it shows you the real world impact of this epidemic. And one of the folks that are highlighted that's highlighted in that video is a young lady from Boone County, and beautiful young lady, cheerleader, honor student, started experimenting with alcohol, marijuana, then pills, and then she said heroin. And she said, once you stick that needle in your arm, you will not go back. And it wasn't until she hit the floor of the jailhouse that she hit rock bottom. But unfortunately, she now has a felony record, and despite the fact that she has gotten clean and completed her counseling degree and even a master's degree, she's still having a difficult time finding employment because there are barriers for people with records. And a lot of these folks truly have paid their debt to society, and are probably some that you're better off employing because they're actually getting treatment than some of the others you just don't know. And when we rolled out the app and the website, we put some PSAs out, some public service announcement out, and they featured folks who were dressed head to toe in red, like a red morph suit. And in the process of filming, we put them out for like a couple hours in Charleston and a couple hours in Huntington, and people were flipping out. They're like, I mean, social media lit up. There were newspaper stories, and people are saying, this is really freaking us out. What should really freak people out is those 4 people who were out for 2 hours in Huntington and Charleston all had overdosed in the year prior, and nobody knew that they were struggling with addiction. So it can be somebody in this room who is struggling with addiction, and you may never know. And that's why it's so critical that we all have the tools at our disposal to help somebody when they need the help. So there's no silver bullet. We've all got to come together, and we all have a part to play.
I just want to add to, you clearly have a good snapshot of what's happening with the addiction problem, but I want to add that it's not really just a young person's problem, and
Right.
and in this state in particular, there are people, middle-aged people who had that they found themselves in that pathway. It's not kids that are suffering predominantly.
No,
It's
and that's
people
why
without
we call it,
jobs,
right?
it's people with no future, no sense of purpose.
Right.
And we don't have the treatment available for these people. It's a bigger problem than high school and college kids.
Oh, I agree with you. It's like I said, it's an equal opportunity destroyer. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about your socioeconomic status. This has hit everybody. I would venture that each one of you in this room can name someone that you know or are close to that have struggled with this, because it is it doesn't care about your age, and it doesn't care about your socioeconomic status. It just doesn't. I agree with you entirely.
If I could for a minute,
Yeah.
and first of all, let me say is, I'll take my chamber hat off and put my clergy hat back on from long ago and say I appreciate hearing somebody from the prosecutor's background address that problem with the compassion, which it sounds like you have towards those who even violated the law, and I've appreciated that mixture about you for quite a while. But let me switch the gears a moment, so back on my chamber hat, and say I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. You sort of alluded to it with Tom's question there a little bit ago. We do live in a different type of West Virginia than many West Virginians right now. And with that, though, we think sometimes the government attitude, both in Charleston and Washington, is, things are going well for you all, you don't need any attention. And I heard you use the word investment. We would be remiss, particularly several people in this room, if we didn't say, we have a serious transportation infrastructure problem in this town. And I'm not talking about potholes, we know, the state's gotta figure that out.
Right.
But we're talking about road development to continue the kind of prosperity that this
And
area
it's,
has.
it's not a new problem. I mean, it existed when I was here, in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it's not a new problem, and,
Same roads. Somebody said same roads.
right, yeah, same road. Right, big pothole, right. And the way we do infrastructure funding needs it to be seriously revisited in West Virginia. We have, I think, one of the nation's largest road systems because we have one system for the whole state. And when that occurs, and has occurred for now generations, it yields that, well, let's just spread it around and keep everybody happy, or at least not as vocal. And we can't afford to do that anymore. I don't think we ever could afford to do that, but we certainly can't afford to do it now, especially when we do have federal highway dollars coming in very soon. They finally passed a federal transportation bill. We've got those dollars coming in. We've got to invest them strategically. And, as business people, I mean, you invest in the products that are growing, because that ultimately helps your bottom line for everybody. And no, I agree with you. We've got to make the tough decisions necessary and risk upsetting people. And that's not just in road funding, but across the board. And it's something that isn't happening right now, and something that sorely needs to happen, because and I appreciate when you have a massive budget shortfall like we do, the way you cut quickly is across the board. That, as a long-term plan, that's suicide, because you invariably cut off your nose to spite your face. The cuts in higher education funding that are happening are crazy in my estimation, because again, you just look at your household and your hours are cut. Well, you got to pay your mortgage payment, you got to pay your car payment, because you still got to get to your job. But what's the best way that you're going to be able to get a better job or get your hours increased? And that's through education. And at the very time when we need it the most, that seems to be where we're cutting, because we can put it on the backs of students, who then in turn get enormous student loan debt that they really have no hope but to pay off, but to move out of state. And if there is one crisis that we have that is above all others, it is that we are losing population. And the knee-jerk reaction is people think, well, we've got a higher relative unemployment. And Dr. Witt could probably school me on this, but it's, people fail to realize that more people actually means more jobs. And I hope I get this analogy right. But for instance, when Castro took over in Cuba, was a mass exodus from Cuba. 90,000 people, I believe, settled in the greater Miami area almost overnight. And people were flipping out. They're like, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the schools, we don't have the hospital, we don't have what we need to support, and we don't have the jobs that we need to support that population. And what they failed to realize is that more people means more butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, God forbid lawyers, doctors, and mechanics. And as it turned out, correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, the whole economy of Miami, that greater Miami area, rose pretty substantially because of that influx of people. And that's why I'm saying we cannot afford to do anything that contributes to that exodus of our people. And in fact, what we've got to do is reverse that trend and start attracting West Virginians who have left back here, because they want to come back. It's making that connection, and it's showing them that it can be a reality for them. Yes, sir.
Bill Koecki, I'm the deputy mayor in Morgantown. You've heard something of the frustrations that we have in this area as to the problems that we have and the attention that we get from down below.
Right.
As governor, what would your attitude be towards the municipalities and the county in terms of giving them the tools to deal with the situations that we have that are specific to our particular locale?
Right. Well, I think that pushing down both the power to do what you need to do, but the accountability is exactly what we need to be doing as a state, not only in, with respect to state and municipalities, but even in our education system. I think that every time we talk about education reform, it's surrounds the curriculum or the assessment, but never does it, where the rubber meets the road, the teaching and the professional development for our teachers and the folks that are there on the ground educating our students, or representing the people and what they need to grow as an entity. That being said, I think there is a coordinating role, and I think we should get more into a coordinating role at the state level, because what happens in Morgantown doesn't just affect Morgantown, it affects this region. So you've got to be mindful of that as well, and make sure that the vitality that exists in Morgantown isn't just limited to it. You use that cluster that is created to enhance the well-being of an entire region. And the example that I could use, if you get out of that coordinating role and you don't support and protect local control, Fayette County, for instance. Fayette County, beautiful place, adventure, USA. I mean, it has our state's really only functioning national park that truly touches and can serve as an economic driver. We're attracting young people there by the droves because it's cool. But the citizens of Fayette County failed to pass a bond issue that would have funded the schools there that are literally crumbling. And I get it, because what they're saying is, I don't want my kids on a bus for an hour and a half. But the state SBA, it favors consolidation. There are other factors too, and I'm not gonna get down in the weeds on that, but it favors consolidation. We've gotta recognize and come together with our communities and say, okay, what do you need to grow? And here are the tools. And let's make sure that you do it, and it affects all of us in a positive way.
Luke, one of the things, too, just to follow up on that, I think, this is probably going to be a maybe comment or a short question, but, you know.
Well, I think you're right. And I kind of alluded to it in my answer on local control, you know, local government control, local education control. I mean, for far too long we tried to control everything at the state level for how kids are educated in a classroom. It doesn't work that way. I mean, you know, unless you're there on the ground and you're educating folks in the classroom, you don't know what they need. Because they all have very different challenges. So I think we've fallen into that trap, and mainly because there's just an enormous pot of money there. I believe that we've fallen in the trap of basically legislating education policy and have really hamstrung a lot of that local control over educating our most vital resource. Same thing with healthcare. I mean, we've got to look at it from a community perspective and helping build communities. That's what I did as U.S. Attorney, and that's what I would do as governor, is when you go into, when you're prosecuting folks, and we did it in Huntington, the Fairfield West area of Huntington was ate up with drugs and violence. And we went in there and we cleared out the biggest drug dealers that existed. We gave some others the opportunity to get help and move on down the road. But you can't stop there. You've got to help fix the community. We took down 60 dilapidated structures, took down a convenience store, and you've got to empower those community members, not just on a city basis, but on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, to take back their streets and give them the resources that they need to do it. So I do agree with you. I mean, I think that we do need to push down more of the resources and more of the control to our local leaders across the board, because you know the challenges that we face. But I would be remiss if I didn't say, again, there certainly needs to be some level of coordination at the county and the state level, because as I said, what happens here in Morgantown doesn't just affect Morgantown. It has effects across the state. So, I mean, I think we need to get more into that idea of truly coordination rather than trying to do it from Charleston, because, like I said earlier, we've got almost 5 different states at least in West Virginia with different challenges.
I thank you all. I hate to cut it off, but I want to give you time to have some social time as well before he needs to depart. Will you begin by joining me in thanking Booth for being here today?